takes more than good tools.
It takes someone who can tell good stories, who can simplify the complicated,
Experiment with the expected.
Inspire the uninspired.
Explore the unexplored.
Excite the body.
Engineer new hands. Hands that wave hello.
mentor the mavericks.
Make sense of the nonsensical.
Connect with cultures far away.
While staying close to those nearby.
It takes more than tools to make a classroom special.
It takes a teacher.
Welcome to Education on Air. Thanks for joining. There are people tuning in from 175 countries around the world. Today, we'll be celebrating educators and exploring the future of education and technology. To make learning work for everyone, it takes a teacher. It takes a teacher to open up new possibilities in young minds, inspire the future, explore the unexplored. Today, you'll hear from inspiring keynote speakers such as Honourable Julia Gillard, Dr John Hattie and Dr Tim Bell on topics such as the importance of teaching and change, visible learning, preparing for the digital technology curriculum and engaging Gen Z. Plus, so much more. After the keynote talks, you'll get tips and tools from sessions led by educators for educators. Here are some tips to make sure you have a successful education on air. Make sure you're in a comfy spot. Turn up your volume. Don't worry if you can't catch all the sessions. They'll be available on demand beginning tomorrow. Join the conversation. Use hashtag Google EDU on air on social media. Let's get going.
Welcome to Education on Air. When I was first in college, I met a professor who just somehow always explained it so perfectly. He not only inspired me, but I remember taking notes, and the whiteboard, which was a blackboard at the time, was so perfectly laid out, and I learned so much. He inspired me so much. That same professor, Jeffrey Ullman, was the faculty member who inspired Larry and Sergey 20 years later. You think teachers matter? Teachers matter a lot. If you think about what we're here to do today is to replicate that experience, that incredibly unique and inspirational experience that I had in a small classroom for every single person on the entire world. We can do that with technology now, and that's what we're all going to make happen.
Welcome, kia ora, to the Australia and New Zealand Education on Air Conference, and this year's theme, It Takes a Teacher. My name is Jason Pellegrino and I am the Managing Director for Google in Australia and New Zealand. And I'd like to start off by saying thank you. Thank you to all of the educators in Australia and New Zealand for the special role that you play every day in shaping our students' future. I understand this special role very personally. My mother was a high school maths teacher at the same school in Wollongong in Australia for over 40 years. My father tutored at university, and my wife is a primary teacher with a passion for new ways of learning. I'm surrounded by teachers who have shaped who I am today. You probably don't hear this that often, but being surrounded by teachers makes me happy. I'm immersed in the impact that teachers can make on our future each day and their passion for developing the next generation. It is my absolute pleasure to be introducing the Australia and New Zealand sessions. We have an inspiring lineup of education thought leaders and change makers who will help spark ideas, conversation, and share practical tips for innovating in the classroom and beyond. Before I introduce these sessions, I'd like to share with you what education means to us here at Google Australia and New Zealand. We're committed to education. It is at the core of our mission. We want to help make the world's information accessible in the classroom. The power of education and the promise of technology can improve the lives of students and educators, but technology is just one of the many tools available to schools focused on the future. The ability to fix tomorrow's problems rests in the hands of young people everywhere. But not every young person gets the education she needs or the support and encouragement he deserves. When a school plans properly for technology, it can help equalise access for all students, and that's what motivates us. I think we'll all agree the world is continually evolving, and unlimited access to information is creating opportunities very different to those in the past. Today's students need skills that enable them to adapt and evolve. So how do we try at Google to help educators prepare students and instill the most appropriate future skills? Our goal is to spark curiosity and a love of learning in students, to encourage them to explore and create their greatest ideas together. To get there, we're building amazing products and tools that turn classrooms into interactive labs, promoting collaboration and creativity. Locally, we've partnered with schools, universities, and non-profits on various education-related programs. Two of which I'm especially proud of include the working to implement the digital technologies curriculum and computer science in the K-12 space, and advocating for the inclusion of mandatory cyber safety and digital citizenship skills within the school curriculum at both primary and secondary levels. Technology is no longer a privilege, it's a necessity, and equal access to it is critical to levelling the playing field. Delivering the opening keynote, Julia Gillard, the 27th Prime Minister of Australia and Chair of the Global Partnership for Education, talks about the importance of teaching and change. Then you will hear from Dr. John Hattie, who will present research on visible learning impacts. Next up, our digital technology panel will discuss the role educators play in empowering students with the skills needed to solve the problems of the future. Mark McCrindle will then share how teachers can cut through the noise and engage with Gen Z. And rounding off the keynote sessions, Dr. Tim Bell provides a practical framework for teaching computational thinking that teachers can use in the classroom or even outside of it. We hope you enjoy these keynotes plus the 100 breakout sessions at Education on Air 2016.
It's great to be part of Education on Air. Education is and has always been a deep passion of mine, so I'm very excited to be talking to you today about the importance of teaching in our changing world. I'm not and have never been a teacher, but when I was at school I thought to myself, when I grow up, I want to be a teacher. In fact, I want to be like my favourite teacher, Mr. Crow. He stood out because he inspired in me and every child he taught a love of learning in the classroom, a curiosity to learn more about the world outside, and the resilience to thrive in it. But I never did achieve my dream of becoming a teacher. Somehow I got waylaid into being a lawyer and parliamentarian. However, I think it worked out all right in the end because I've had the privilege of serving as Australia's Education Minister and Prime Minister. Both of these roles enabled me to step through the doors of hundreds, if not thousands, of classrooms and witness the magic of learning. And through serving as Minister and Prime Minister, I had the power to drive one of the largest reform programs to school education in Australia's history, a legacy I remain deeply proud of today. Now in my life post-politics, I chair the Global Partnership for Education, or GPE, the world's only multilateral fund solely dedicated to improving access to and the quality of school education. I'm also the patron of a fantastic organisation called CAMFED, which is focused on tackling poverty and inequality by supporting African girls to go to school and succeed. In this work, I am fortunate to come across story after story of teachers who have profoundly improved their students' lives. Like Bin Nu, a teacher from Cambodia, whose decision to purchase a vision testing kit and test her 205 students uncovered one 8-year-old child, Meitai, with a serious sight problem. Meitai's life and ability to learn were transformed when she received glasses. Meitai's teacher did what teachers around the world do day by day and child by child. You change lives for the better. And by improving the futures of individuals, you build a better world. Of course, not all teachers globally have the support they need to inspire and prepare their students. Many countries continue to have an average of 40 or more students per teacher, inadequate teacher training and limited teaching resources. And despite teachers being so vital, globally we know we are short of them and they are often undervalued. Indeed, demand for teachers, especially in developing countries, is expected to grow dramatically in coming years. In low-income countries, this demand is set to nearly double by 2030, from 3.6 million to 6.6 million. If we are to have any chance of meeting the global ambition for higher quality and more accessible education, then we must create more teachers and then support and value them as they go about their vital role of preparing students for the future. And getting children ready for what the world will look like in their adulthood is harder now than it has ever been because we live in an age of super fast change. The current school-age generation is younger than the internet. You and I remember what it was like to do so many of our work tasks, such as research, manually. Today's school students could not even possibly imagine it. They will find out about that in their history studies. By 2020, almost everyone in the world will have a mobile phone and 2.6 billion people will have smartphones. These sorts of changes means that the way young people communicate, entertain and learn has changed more in the past 15 years than it has in the past 570 since the invention of the printing press. Technology is developing at an astonishing pace. Indeed, in the next 24 months, the sum of the additional computing power which will be added to our world will be more than that generated in all of human history to date. We are running up a very steep curve that is changing everything about how we live and work. Even if the mobility and speech challenges of machines are resolved, machines will never be innovators, ideas creators. People need to do that. The students of the future need to do that. Innovation in education that prepares students for these challenges is now essential. Schools are already getting ahead of the curve by offering classes like coding to their students, focusing on these new skills as well as the generalist skills that make us better thinkers, learners and innovators will be essential. Critically, teachers are moving from being transmitters of content to developers of high-level cognitive skills like critical thinking and social skills like teamwork. Teachers are the best placed to understand student capability and student need. You have the power to interpret the curriculum creatively, to build the skills that are critical to finding success in our constantly evolving world. You can and do use new technologies to reach your students and deliver lessons in innovative ways. And through technology, you are learning more effectively from each other. No longer does peer-to-peer learning need to be confined within individual schools. Lessons from every corner of the world are available to teachers and therefore to their students. The whole education community needs to embrace this technology shift. Through it, we can better empower teachers to teach students the skills they need to adapt and thrive in a changing world. I have no doubt that each of you who are signed in here today already has some brilliant ideas on how technology can be embraced to deliver the best outcomes for students. I encourage you to share your ideas freely with your peers, to embrace new ideas and innovations that you hear about today, and to be bold in implementing new ways forward in your classrooms, schools and education systems. Embracing change starts with you. It ends with more adaptable, resilient and successful students. We all share a commitment to a world in which every child gets a great education and every child is able to cite a teacher who changed their life, just as Maytai is able to cite Bin Nu and I am able to credit Mr. Crow. I wish you a very successful Education on Air 2016.
It takes more than pencils, paper and books to inspire tomorrow's authors. It takes imagination and superpowers. It takes a teacher.
I'm John Hattie. I'm the Director of the Melbourne Education Research Institute at the University of Melbourne. We are surrounded by evidence, both the evidence from the research and evidence from teachers' experience. This often leads us to create theories of teaching, and wow, do teachers have strong theories about what works for them. And these teachers' theories form the heart of how they make the moment-by-moment judgments about what the student knows, what they don't know, how the student learns or does not engage, and critically, where to next in the learning cycle. These theories also determine the choice of activities and lessons and activities and methods of delivery, and it would be folly not to listen to teachers talk about their thinking, about their judgment making and their theories of teachers and learning. When was the last time you heard a teacher talk about how they think about teaching and student learning? When was the last time someone asked you about how you made those moment-by-moment judgments in the classroom? Instead, we too often bombard teachers with new ways to teach, provide them with our favourite resources and websites and apps. We make them come and sit and listen and hear us speak about our favourite topics. And during this Education on Air conference, you'll be told about many things that work, and nearly every one of these will be premised on, I know this worked because it worked for me. I have evidence from my experience it worked. And really will they provide evidence of this impact across classes and teachers, but mainly implore you that it worked for them. We are surrounded by such evidence. I took the task of asking why it seems that everyone's views about what works in teaching seems to find support. Surely not every view and intervention works well. Sometimes even the views are competing. And let me contrast this by your experience when you were a student at school. There was massive variations amongst your teachers about how they made these moment-by-moment decision-making. Surely they can't all be right. So I spent many years locating studies to place them along an achievement continuum, to ask about the relative effects. And 250 million students, 80,000 studies and 1,400 meta-analyses later, what were some of the highlights? Well, when you look at the influences on achievement, it turns out it is the case that almost everything works to improve learning. If you ask, can you improve learning? Then 90 to 95% of our answers can do this. No wonder every teacher can find evidence. No wonder every politician and parent can make policy and then find evidence to support them. We have to up the ante and ask not what works, but what works best. We have to up the ante and ask teachers for evidence of their impact. Surely every student's entitled to at least a year's growth for a year's impact. And it's incumbent for us to be more clear about what this at least year's growth looks like. To talk aloud with colleagues about this and subject to professional critique. Having theories that lead to less than a year's impact needs to be questioned and changed. Nearly all the top influences relate to this teacher's theories of teaching and learning. Let me run through 4 at the top, just to provide you a flavour. First, teachers' collective efficacy. When all adults in the school collectively have high expectations, which of course has to be fed by evidence that these high expectations are realised. And here the importance again of teachers talking with each other about their theories of teachers and learning and basing them on evidence of high impact. Second, response to intervention. Teachers engaging in excellent diagnosis of what each student knows and, more importantly, does not know, and seeking evidence that what they are doing in the class makes a difference to the student's learning, and then modifying their teaching on the basis of this evidence. I call this teachers are to die for. Excellent diagnosis, many interventions, and continuous evaluation. Third, attending to the thrill of learning, building trust amongst students and with the teacher. So it's okay for students to say, I don't know, for them to see errors as opportunities for learning, and to build the confidence and reduce the anxiety of attempting challenging tasks. By having students know up front what success looks like so they are part of the pursuit of the process and learning, and having a joy and thrill in deliberately practicing to attain this success. Fourth, opening up the classroom for others to help you see your impact. Recall, about 80% of what happens in the classroom a teacher doesn't see or hear. So we need resources and ways to help you uncover that other 80%. We're doing this through apps like Visible Classroom to provide teachers with immediate coded transcripts of all they say. We are extensively using student voice about their learning to help teachers hear their impact. We use exit tickets and we devised assessments that focus on telling teachers about their impact, who they taught well or not, the magnitude of this learning, what they taught well, and the best steps as to where to go next. I could go on, but I want you to know what's missing. The effects of structural changes that parents, teachers and policymakers most commonly ask for are near the bottom. These structural effects have very low impact, such as different kinds of schools, charters, academies, trust, ability grouping, new curricula, class size and technology. And again, notice that all the top influences relate to how teachers think applies to all students. It's less who the student is, but how the teachers think that matters most. These remarkably high influences relating to how we think led me to develop a series of mind frames that underlie the most powerful impact on students. And the most powerful mind frame is this. When teachers walk into a class and they say to themselves, my job here today is to understand and evaluate my impact, then all good things follow. It's not to get through the curriculum, engage student activities, pass the test, but to monitor our impact, which surely begs the 3 impact questions. What do I mean by impact? What do I mean by the magnitude of impact? And the equity one. How many students gain this year's growth for a year's input? And so much the better if these beliefs about impact have been critiqued and challenged by other teachers in the school. It should not be that every time a student meets a new teacher, their success is random up or down, depending on that teacher's belief about what impact is. Hence the importance of collectively thinking aloud about what we mean by impact. And to do this, you need great school leaders who decide that impact is the core narrative of the school, who create a climate of trust to allow teachers to think out aloud about this impact, who ensure that all in the school have high expectations about the levels of impact, and who continually monitor that there is indeed delivery of these expectations on student learning, and who lead and feed this impact back to teachers, celebrate expertise, celebrate success, and promote it's the expertise of teachers that make the difference. Another powerful mind frame relates to, I have a defensible understanding of how students learn. What do you mean by learning? Can you speak aloud about how you learn? Most of us don't have a good language to talk about learning, so what chance our students? What we mean by learning is a huge and important topic, and we've just published a meta-synthesis of the optimal ways to help students learn and engage in this process of learning in a journal called Nature, The Science of Learning, and it's a free download. We call our theory of learning the Kenny Rogers theory, as across the many learning strategies you have to know when to engage them and you have to know when to hold them. The same strategies do not always work, as their success depends on when and where you are in the learning cycle. Do you realise the importance of students knowing how to summarise and organise in the early stages of learning? Then the power of deliberate practice, rehearsal and memorisation. Then the importance of students knowing when to engage in different strategies to calibrate towards success, followed by peer and self think aloud. Do you realise the danger of introducing methods like problem-based learning too early? The critical difference between surface and deep learning and how both are necessary at the right time, and that we can teach transfer if we focus the student on the similarities and differences in the problems before they start, and the massive influence of building students' confidence and knowing success before they invest in tasks. So my argument is that teachers' theories of teaching must be based on well-supported theories of learning. It is the teachers that make the greatest difference to student learning. The most impactful teachers are those who continually and effectively and collectively evaluate their impact on students. It's how they think and know about how students learn. And it's this collective engagement to work together to make this impact. Hence again, that importance of focused school leaders who build the trust for this to happen, who provide the resources and time for this to happen, and who help in evaluating the success of feeding these high expectations, and who esteem and promote this expertise across the school with the parents and scream loud to the policymakers. It's the expertise that needs funding and supporting and celebrating. Light the spark, build the team, debate and critique what we mean by impact, which leads to the importance of knowing thy impact.
It takes more than brushes, paint, and books to find the bigger picture. It takes talent and a common canvas. It takes a teacher.
Hi everybody, my name's Sally Ann Williams. I'm the Engineering Community and Outreach Manager here in Google Australia, and today I'm really excited. We're going to talk about a topic near and dear to my heart and certainly to the heart of my country, but also countries everywhere, which is the digital technologies curriculum and its implementation in Australia. Computer science, digital technologies, computational thinking, these are the skills of the 21st century, and there's never been a higher demand globally for students to not only learn these skills but bring them into combination and coordination with other learning areas and disciplines to solve real problems in the world, not only in the classroom but in their future careers. And today what we're here to talk about is some of the implementation that's been going on in Australia. We want to clear up a few myths, I think, and misconceptions about what the digital technologies curriculum is. Hint, it's not just about coding, it is about computer science, it is about problem solving, it is about 21st century skills, and also give you some confidence and some insights and tips and tricks on where you can go and what you can do to bring both the excitement, the engagement, the skills, and just a joy for learning this into your classroom, which we think is probably one of the best things you can possibly do to prepare your students for the jobs of the future and the jobs of tomorrow, but also just to instill into them an absolute passion for digital technologies in every walk of life for their future, which is going to serve them well no matter what they do. So today, I'd like to introduce our panellists. We've got a great panel here this morning. We've got Dr. Rebecca Vivian. She is a research fellow from the Computer Science and Education Research Group at Adelaide University. Rebecca has a history in, she has a background in teaching, in primary school education, and also digital technologies. And she's been heavily involved in working on projects and programs to train teachers in the classroom all over Australia and actually globally what it is to teach computational thinking in the classroom. We also have Associate Professor Katrina Faulkner. Katrina is a phenomenal researcher. She is the head of school of computer science at Adelaide University. She also heads up the research group, the Computer Science in Education Research Group at Adelaide University. And the work that Katrina's been doing, not only in this for many, many, many years, but in the last few years has actually been recognised in Australia as world leading and certainly national leading. And she's heading up an entire team to help with the implementation Australia-wide, which is phenomenal. We also have Nick Briley. Nick is a primary school teacher and an e-learning coordinator from our school on our North Shore over in Sydney. He's very passionate about digital technologies and education and learning in the classroom. And he's actually out there at the coalface on a day-to-day working with kids and teachers in the classroom. So I think he's going to bring a great insight to us about what it's like and what you can do to actually engage with this curriculum in your classroom. And last but certainly not least is Claire Lau. Claire is a Year 5 student and she is a digital native. So she is living out the digital technologies in life in general, but more importantly than that, she's been getting involved in coding and computer science and entrepreneurial programs, and she's actually part of the winning team of the next Search for the Tech Girl Superheroes this year with an app that she and her friends have built for a phenomenal competition that happened Australia-wide. So we're actually going to get to hear from her about what her perspective is as a learner and a student and what she loves about this. So I'm really excited. So thank you, panel, for joining us today. I think this is great. I think to kick it off, I'd really love to just get some perspective from you, Kat, and from Beck, and then from Nick, about what your thoughts are on the opportunity of the digital technologies curriculum and why you think it's important. What's the opportunity for kids today and what's the opportunity for teachers? So maybe we'll start with you, Kat.
Sure. Well, digital technologies, they're everywhere and they're changing the way we do everything in our world. And the digital technologies curriculum is not about every student, every young person becoming a software engineer. It's about everyone understanding how they can use technology to solve the problems in their community and the world around them. So if they want to create an app to do a particular thing, they can, because they have those skills. And for teachers, I think it's an amazing opportunity to be able to teach their students to create things. Mm-hmm. With technology, it's not theoretical. You can actually go and build the app. You can build what you want to. And so it's a really motivating factor for engaging in learning all sorts of other learning areas as well.
Mm-hmm. And so Beck, tell us about your engagement in this, because you actually studied to become a primary school teacher, and now you're sort of involved in the implementation of the digital technologies curriculum. Why is this so important, and why are you so passionate about every primary school teacher getting engaged in this?
Well, I guess for me, my background being in education, I had no idea what computer science was when I joined the school and the research group. So just working with this team and working on the computer science education programs, I've really learned a lot about what it means to be a computer scientist, that anyone can be a computer scientist, and it's really about solving problems, and that it can go into any field. And I think that's so exciting, and I'm quite passionate about helping teachers, and then teachers show their students what computer science is about and why the digital technologies curriculum is so important.
Fantastic. And Nick, you are at the coalface. Tell us why you think this is important, and also if you could just touch on, what is the opportunity in schools? Because I think you're there. You're trying to drive this change. You're trying to engage every teacher and every student with the digital technologies curriculum. What's the opportunity there, and why is it so critical that we embrace this now and really get involved with it?
Okay, so it's really about big picture thinking, okay? We're sort of used to thinking in silos in classrooms, right? This really allows for us to think a bit deeper about what the potential really is for students and how big we can go. So it's about connecting around the world, but it's also about real engagement. Students have a real interest to impact their communities, and I think we have to allow them that through this curriculum. It's also about working together. I think that's really, really important, because when you look at all the problems in the world today, no one's doing it on their own. So we really need to practice that inside classrooms. And also it's great for kids because they get to solve problems, and not just easy things, things that they're really interested in, and really higher order stuff. So it's a fantastic opportunity for us inside schools.
That's a great answer and a great segue to you, Claire. I know that you've been involved with a great program this year called The Search for the Next Tech Girl Superhero. And that's been almost just what Nick said, an opportunity to find a problem that you're passionate about and actually use technology to solve it. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've done and what you and your team did and what the app was, what was the problem that you were trying to solve, and why are you so excited about what you've built?
So we created an app called Reading Republic over a course of, I think, 6 months. We worked on the app. We all had different roles. I had a role as a coder, and they all stretched different parts of like your brain, and it was really challenging but really great to see our finished product at the end.
And what was the problem that you were trying to solve with Reading Republic? Why did you focus on reading?
Because we realised in our society there weren't enough children reading, and reading is a really crucial part of education, and you need it to build a future for yourself, basically.
So that's really cool. So you did what each of our panellists have talked about. You found a real world problem that wasn't about technology, that we need to engage more kids in reading, and then you actually built an app so that kids would be engaged in more reading. Tell us a little bit about that. As the coder on the team, what did you enjoy about the process? What was the most exciting thing and most engaging thing about being part of a program like that for you?
I got to learn a lot from different people. I got to learn a lot of new softwares, and it definitely challenged me a lot, and sometimes I felt like I couldn't do it, but when you see what you've done and it works, it's really nice to see.
There's some really good lessons about persevering, I think,
Yeah.
if you don't get it right. Did everything work right the first time?
No, plenty went wrong.
And so the lesson for anybody else out there, for other students, would be to give it a go?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, great. So I'd love to talk a little bit more, maybe just to Beck and Kat, I'd love to dig into this a little bit more about the curriculum. I know that there's a lot of teachers that are embracing this and they're excited, and I know there's a lot more teachers out there that are kind of like, this is coming really quickly, I'm not sure where to start, what do I do, where do I go? So, you know, maybe Kat, if you could tell us a little bit about what are some of the opportunities, and Beck, then I'd love to hear from you about some examples of maybe a teacher that has overcome some fear in this and what they can do to get on the journey and get involved.
Sure. There's so much out there to help support teachers. Because there's so many people, particularly working in the industry, working from government, who are really interested in supporting people embracing computer science. But of course, there's so much out there that's almost too much. It's actually really hard for people to find what they need. But I think that, you know, the critical first steps are really to work with teachers and to help them see the potential that it can have for the kids in their classroom. You know, when you see what a young person can do when they when they can harness that power and actually create technology, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think that's really motivating. What we find is a lot of the teachers that we work with, they're actually quite hesitant initially because they think that computer science is this massive thing. It's going to take them years to learn anything, to be able to do anything in their classroom. And so one of the things that we work with is to help our primary school teachers in Australia understand that it's just a little step from what they're already doing. Because computer science is not about code, it's about the problem-solving approach. And it's not like we don't do problem solving in primary schools already. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's really about taking that and looking at how you can use technology in that problem solving process. And so that's a lot of the approach that we take is there.
Great.
And we also have some teachers that come into our programs or when they're first learning about the digital technologies curriculum, and they think it's about digital literacy as in using technologies and building those skills around using them as tools. But we've noticed quite a shift in that aha moment where they realise it's actually about having students develop the thinking skills, those problem solving skills, and about having them create technology and create the solutions. So it's quite exciting to see teachers transition from that moment. And we have seen in our own programs, we've got, say, a 56-year-old Nana who came through our course, and she self-confessed in our community the first time that this was very new to her and she felt quite overwhelmed. But by the end of the course, she had ended up creating resources around binary, around computational thinking, and algorithms as well. So it's really exciting to see that that moment.
Fantastic. So for those of you out there who are watching, what we're actually talking about here is some free online professional development programs that we have created in partnership with Adelaide University to give you all of the resources that you need to get started in the digital technologies curriculum. And we'll make sure that they're in a link to the talk description so that you can check those out and get engaged. Nick, I'd love to know what's it like in the classroom. Tell me about, do you have any stories that you can share with us about what it's actually really like on the implementation side? What are schools thinking about? What's working? What's not? What should teachers out there that are watching this today be going, this is the one thing I'm going to take away from Guru Nick and implement in my classroom tomorrow?
Okay, so I think touching on what has been said already, I think you have to look at it as it's not this huge thing that's just going to invade your classroom and you're not ready for it. You need to sort of take a step back and go, you know what, you can do this in little pieces. And I think the best way to approach anything like this is to look at two things. Look at your program and look at, well, okay, one thing, how can we get the kids to work together on this? How can we get them to work together on a solution? And the other thing is, well, we need to incorporate modern day tools. So we need to work out, okay, so look at my program and go, how can I integrate tools into this and do it effectively? And I think you also need to incorporate problem solving. So that's a big one.
Have you got any favourite sort of examples from the classroom of things that you've implemented in the last year that you just think that was amazing? One particular thing that the students really, really love, a couple of things actually. The first one is coding with robots, okay? And the best thing that they've liked to do with that, we do a few different things, but they really enjoy the opportunity to create mazes for robots and then code their way through. And I think the best part of that is that the kids are making mistakes and they're making them often and they're learning from them. And we need to get the message out there to them that it's okay to make mistakes and that's the best way to learn, I think. And they feel good about that and they go, well, that's okay, we can learn from this. And another one is bringing in things like Breakout EDU, which is fantastic for getting the kids to be engaged in their learning and work together, which is fantastic, and solve really problems, like really, really higher order thinking problems, and eventually work on it together, which is as a whole class, which is great. And getting the idea out there that it's okay to fail and celebrate that failure and think about, okay, well, what can we do for next time to make sure that we get where we want to be. So, you know, what are some of the things that get you excited about the digital technologies curriculum and the implementation? What are the things that you're seeing that are working? What is it that teachers should be looking for? How should they actually embrace it? And what does it mean in the classroom for you? I'd love to hear some of your stories.
Well, I feel like it's a really exciting time. And I suppose you have to look at it like you don't have to know everything. And I think a lot of teachers are starting to realise that. You don't have to know everything on a technical basis. It's really about adopting your own thinking. And you have to look at it like you have an opportunity to light a fire that's going to start into a bonfire with these students. And one good example of that is when I brought some kids to Google a couple of weeks ago, and they did some computational thinking. And one student in particular really, really engaged with that. And now he's talking about coming to work here one day. So I think that's something really, really powerful. And I think it's just getting the kids interested in it. I think that's a big part of it. And I think we have to, as teachers, we have to be good role models of that. We have to take it on board and say, you know what, we don't know everything, but we're going to try.
So what's been your strategy for engagement in your school and getting other teachers to do that? Because that's pretty hard to move from being the teacher who is the expert in the classroom to actually going, you know what, maybe I don't know everything about this and we're going to embrace that together. How do you navigate that with digital technologies in a way that sets teachers up for success and allows them to have a great experience? Because I think that's probably going to help with the confidence gap.
I have to put myself out there as not an expert. I don't know everything, and you have to be very open with teachers about that. I don't know everything. But hey, let's find out together. Okay, so that might mean putting them in the right direction for a few different resources like we've spoken about today, but it's also about working together. Okay, just because I'm not working in the same classroom as another teacher doesn't mean that we can't work together on something. And it's basically about getting over the fear as well, that it's okay to just try it.
Have you got any teachers in your school that have overcome the fear and have been like real standouts? Have you got any stories you can tell us there?
We do have one teacher who self-confessed that she doesn't do technology, all that sort of thing, and she would come to me all the time with, well, how can you do this for me? And I say, yeah, I can, but I'm not going to. I'm going to teach you how to do it. And how do I do this with my students? I say, well, we'll do it together. Okay. So I don't know everything, and I need to make that clear with my staff that I fail, and I fail often, and I'm not an expert, and we aren't meant to be experts. And I think we have to be good role models of that with each other, support each other.
And where's she at now with things? Is she excited about it?
She's very excited. In fact, she often comes to show me, and on a Monday morning she'll come into the staff room and say, "Oh, you'll never believe what I do." She might have created something for her students, or she's really interested in transforming what she used to do, whether it be transforming something from an interactive whiteboard set of slides. But she's now made that into a real experience with her kids where they're engaged and they're working together. I think that's really powerful, and I think she's just one really good example of what we can do if we just step outside our comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, so it's more than lighting a fire just underneath your students, it's actually lighting a fire underneath your fellow educators and getting them excited. I love that.
And I think there's a myth though that older teachers, they're not going to embrace this and that it's the younger teachers that will, but we're actually finding it's the older teachers are embracing this, and it's sort of reigniting their passion for teaching just before they're even retiring as well. So we have some teachers coming in saying that.
I love it.
I think what you're seeing there is actually because it's building upon your skill as a teacher. It's not building upon your skill as a computer scientist, because it's teachers who've been working for decades and have all of those skills. They can bring all of that together into creating amazing solutions. And the technology is just a little aspect, a layer that sits above it.
I love it. So key takeaway is for teachers to talk to each other about this and find out who in your school is excited and get engaged with them. And for those that are fearful, maybe tag up and team up and overcome those fears together. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So I want to kind of think about if you have the opportunity, or you have the opportunity today, to put out a passionate plea to educators, not just in Australia, but teachers all around the world. What's the one thing that you would say to them? And so we're going to go down the line, starting from Katrina, and then we're going to finish up with Claire, because I think it's great to hear what a student wants their teacher to do. We never hear that enough. But Katrina, what's the one passionate plea that you have for educators and for teachers?
Sure, I think really it's about having a go. Technology has this amazing power to be able to engage people, because you can create real solutions to human problems. And when you do that, when children can actually work together, they can create something real. They're so engaged in learning about computer science, but also every other learning area that they're engaged with. And to be able to create that environment in your classroom is a wonderful thing. And it just takes one step just to get started.
Love it. Rebecca?
I would say just to reassure teachers that you don't have to be the expert in the classroom, and try to use strategies to navigate that. So, using your students and what they know and helping them teach their peers, and also working with you. Use the resources that are available and connect with communities. So connect with other teachers. So looking at online communities, looking at face-to-face communities in your school or in your local region.
Teachers, you're not alone. Connect, connect, connect. That's a key one. Nick?
Please don't be afraid. There is no stereotypical digital technologies teacher. They come in all shapes and forms. And so once you do take that first step, please support each other, seek support, and that doesn't have to be just within your school. There's people overseas and internationally that you can count on for advice. And I think as teachers, one of the best things is that we're so giving and share all of our resources all the time. So we really need to take advantage of that. And just have the courage to try one thing. You have the support out there, so take advantage of that. And work towards implementing this in your classroom, because it's about your students and improving what teaching and learning looks like in your classroom with your students.
I love it. And we've got a passionate student here in Claire. So Claire, if you could say one thing to every single teacher out there, a plea from a student, what would that be?
Remember that your students want to work with you. They always want to work with you, and they want to learn with you too. Failing will eventually lead to you succeeding, and that's a useful skill that they can learn from you. So.
And do you think that it's more exciting for students if there is digital technologies in the classroom and if you get to embrace this?
Definitely. It makes them more excited about coming into the classroom every morning, and they know there's a piece of technology in the room that they can use.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. In closing, I just want to say my passionate plea to educators everywhere, not just in Australia, give it a go. Nothing is too difficult. You are smart, you are capable, you are passionate, and you are there to make a difference in the lives of students for generations to come. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we have to really bring the skill, the knowledge, the excitement to students everywhere to actually engage with technology, to be more than just consumers of it, but be creators and be problem solvers, and to actually be the ones who solve the really big challenges in the world that we're facing today and the ones that they're going to grow up and inherit. And there's nothing too difficult for you. We've got some great resources and links. Just check out the links in the talk description below, and we really look forward to actually connecting with you in the community online. So thanks. Bye.
Wires, bolts, and books to explain engineering. It takes BattleBots and a really good cause. It takes a teacher.
Hi, I'm Mark McCrindle, and I'm excited to be speaking to you about engaging with Generation Z, and delighted to be speaking to you as educators, because you are the change makers. Now, at the end of a big year, you may not feel like you're really changing the world, but it's not about changing the world, it's about impacting students, it's about equipping educational communities, it's about empowering them to make a difference in their own world. It's really about casting stones on waters, it's creating ripples. It was Mother Teresa who said that. I alone cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the waters and create many ripples. The challenge these days, as you cast those stones on waters, as you create those educational ripples, is that you're casting stones not on pristine ponds, but on chaotic times. And ripples are impacting on education. There are other waves of change in our society, and it creates quite the realm of chaos. And so what is the context of Generation Z? Where do they fit into our learning communities? Well, we've got the senior leaders, indeed grandparents in our society, the grandparents of Generation Z. They are the baby boomers, and they have had many impacts on education over many decades. And you've got the emerging leaders in our educational facilities, Generation X, and they're the parents of the older students. You've got Generation Y as the new parents, and also the key and emerging generation of teachers. And of course, we've got Generation Z themselves, born since the mid-1990s, the students of today. Well, we need to understand them to be able to connect with them, to be able to educate them. And they have been influenced in different times, and they speak a different dialect of the English language. If you even think about some of the words they use, it can create a challenge in connecting with them. Like this statement that came my way recently from a Gen Z fellow. He said, "For shiz, my study gig is totes cron. The work is def's cray cray, but YOLO." And it took a little bit of time on various dictionary websites to work that one out, but I think what he was trying to say is, I like my school. Clearly understanding their world of technology is key to engaging with them. If I was to sum up Generation Z with 5 words, I would say that firstly, they are global. The world's first truly global generation. Not just through social networking and the friends that they have, but the fashions, the brands, the foods, the technologies, of course, are global. And they are digital in terms of the tools that they use. We call them Generation Glass because it's glass, not paper. That is the first medium of interaction and learning for them. They are mobile in terms of where they will live and work, and their lifestyles, far more dynamic and more changed than ever before. They're visual in terms of how they consume content, not just the written forms of old. It's a world of YouTube and visuals. It's a world of Instagram and connectivity through the visual means rather than just the written means. And of course, they're social in terms of who influences them. It's not just the experts. It's not just the authority figures. It's the peer groups that influence them more than ever before. In fact, so digital and social and connected and global are they that safety experts have had to come up with new signs for Generation Z, which they put at exitways, like this one: in case of fire, exit building before tweeting about it. It's that sort of connected generation. Well, the education that you're providing for this generation is going to have to sustain them through more educational years than ever before. They truly will be lifelong learners. Indeed, for us Gen Xers, about 1 in 4 in Australia has a uni degree. For Generation Y, it's already 1 in 3. For Generation Z, perhaps almost half of them will end up with a university degree in their lifetime. And so this foundational primary and secondary education will sustain them through more education and indeed a longer participation in the workforce than we've ever before seen. All up, if we include the 13 years of schooling for the average student today, that equates to about 14,000 hours of learning. But you know, they will spend 6 times as many hours in the workforce, about 84,000 hours. And so again, this foundation of education will equip them to be lifelong learners through other study and indeed the workforce, more than we've ever seen before. So what do we need to equip them with to future-proof their lives and careers in these changing times? Well, 3 words and keys to keep in mind. Firstly, they need to be innovative. They will need to adapt and adjust in their own roles to remain relevant in these times of change. The average national Australian tenure of an employee in a job is currently 3 years. Now, if that plays out in the lifetime of one of our school leavers today, and based on the trend of them working through their 60s, which will be the norm for Generation Z, it means that they will have 17 separate jobs in their lifetime. They'll upskill and retrain every few jobs. They'll end up with 5 careers. They'll be working in jobs in the future that, of course, currently don't exist. Just as now, as they start their roles, those that are moving into the workplace, they're working in jobs that didn't exist a decade ago. I mean, obviously there's app developers and web designers and social media marketers, but some of these other jobs that have emerged just in the last couple of years, like virtual reality engineers and cognitive computer analysts that can help bridge the gap between technology and humans, data visualization experts and drone pilots or UAV operators, medical nanotechnology, cybersecurity. It is a fast changing world, and we have to equip them, therefore, not just with the knowledge, but with the innovative skills to be resilient, to change, to adapt, and to so future-proof their direction. If we think about how we educate, we as educators have had to be innovative and adaptive as well. We were shaped in a delivery that was more verbal, and now it's a visual generation. For baby boomers and Gen Xers, it was a sit and listen classroom experience, but now it's about try and see and participate, a more activist learning approach. From a teacher to becoming a facilitator of learning, from a focus on job security and knowledge to flexibility and future proofing, from a leadership style where you sat within a chain of command, a commanding role, to more a collaborating, participative leadership model, from a curriculum-centered environment to a learner-centric process of delivery, from closed book exams to engaging with this generation living in an open book world, just a few clicks away from any piece of information on the planet. They are growing up in what we call the great screen age. They are screen agers. Just in their formative years, they've seen their world radically change. In fact, it's a world of tablets, of course, but just a few years ago, when people were talking about tablets, they were talking about the medications that they took with meals. Clouds used to be those things in the sky, and of course now that refers to technology. What a transformation we've seen in a short time. So that change and trend will continue. It's about being innovative. It's also equipping them to be collaborative. And by this I mean that their roles won't be where they'll be locked into a hierarchical chart, an organisational chart of old where it was about authoritarian leadership and a chain of command, but rather they'll need to be flexible and empowered. They'll need to be entrepreneurial in outlook and self-directed in approach. It's the world of the flat structure, the collaborative leadership model. And so equipping them to be collaborative in style is going to be key. In other words, sure, we need to equip them with those cognitive skills, but we need to equip them with the relational skills as well. Yes, we've got to teach the eyes of the head, but we've got to equip them with the eyes of the heart. I guess I mean from that, it's not just about the cerebral connection, but the relational and emotional engagement. From IQ to EQ, that's what a collaborative world needs. And so the old approach won't work today. The old signs that said things like, warning to all personnel, firings will continue until morale improves. We can't change people externally. We've got to empower them through those relational and people skills. So if we've got a generation that are innovative and collaborative, they're well on their way. On my third tip, be responsive. They will have to learn to adapt and respond to the changes that they see. The speed of change, it's a little bit like a centripetal force. Think about a young child on a merry-go-round and the force that that places. You've got to grab on to stay on. The force of that churn tries to flick you off, and change is like that. It pushes us to the margins. It tries to flick us off. We're all in a non-stop quest for relevance, for adaptation, for responding to the changes, and that's the case for Generation Z. We've got to equip them to respond to the changes and lead by an example in that way. In a world of apps and social media, if our social connectivity, our social network is defined not so much by these apps and platforms, but by that old device, the Teledex, time for an upgrade. The point, of course, is that we have to model being responsive and adaptive if we want our students to respond in the same way. So it's about creating a culture of learning that's a collaborative, innovative and responsive environment where we walk the talk, where we model the response to change, where we experiment and innovate to engage with an ever-changing generation. You know, we are really dealing with educational structures like classes and curriculums and examinations that are of the 19th century. And we're often educating in facilities that were built in the 20th century, yet we're connecting with a 21st century generation. That therefore requires us to be innovative and collaborative and responsive, and to equip our students with those skills as well. And if all of that fails, remember what Ferris Bueller said. 30 years ago, he burst on the scene and said, hey, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it. Keep your eyes on the trends, engage with the next generation, and you'll equip them to be the leaders of the future. And all the best as you do it. Thanks.
It takes more than beakers, scales and books to make sense of science. It takes an entrepreneurial spirit and a business plan. It takes a teacher.
Hi, my name's Tim Bell. I'm a Professor of Computer Science at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. So there's this new subject appearing in schools around the world in the curricula. Sometimes it's called digital technologies or computer science or computing or computational thinking. And I want to look at, what's it really about? What's the big picture? What are we trying to achieve here? Because we can get a little bit focused on details like binary numbers or coding in Scratch or something like that. But it's really important to see how they fit in to everything that we're doing. And one of the first questions to ask is, of course, what's the difference with digital technologies? What is it about them? And the clue is in the name. It's about digits. It's about representing things just using numbers. And often the digits that we use are just 0 and 1. Amazingly, we can represent every type of text, every type of image, every video, sound, DNA sequences, even smell, just using zeros and ones. I've had the help of some students today to actually show how this can work. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look at how you could represent values just using zeros and ones, and we don't need to use computers to do that either. Now my challenge for you is that I want a particular number of dots. I want to see exactly 11 dots, but remember it has to be black or white. So do you want the 16 to be black or white? Black? Okay. What about the 8? White?
Yeah, and then the 4 would be black.
Okay, black for the 4. So black for the 4. You want the 2 and the 1. We've got 11 dots. Okay, well done. Fantastic. Now, is there another way to get 11 dots?
No, there isn't.
What do you reckon? Well, could you do it? Could you have the 16 white?
No.
Why not?
Because it's already 5 over.
Right, it's too many. Yeah. Okay. Could you do it without the 8? Because you wanted the 8 white, but
no, because 1 plus 2 plus 4 is below 11.
right. So you can't get enough. So you have to have the 8. Could you do it if the 4 was white?
No. Wait, we have the 8. No, you couldn't.
Well, you said you had to have the 8.
Yeah. So no, you couldn't because it would be over. Because the 8 is essential, you can't use the 4 because it would already be 1. And the 8 is way too essential.
It's like super essential. So I can actually give you a number. I'm going to give you a number now. You ready for it?
Yep.
It's black, black, white, white, white.
Black, white, white.
Yeah. What's that number?
7.
You got it. Okay, okay. Have you noticed how often number 1's flipping over?
Yeah. Yeah.
How often?
It's every time.
Every time, yeah. In fact, what's special about the numbers that she's got the white card for?
Well, it's because it's the two values that it holds, 1 and 0.
Yep.
Yeah. And but our counting system uses 9 digits, actually 10 if you include 0.
Yep.
And this is using 2. So for example, if you want to do, if you wanted to do 10 in our system, you would have a 9, but to turn into a 10, you would get an overflow. The same thing is happening in this, but just at a small scale.
Yep. Well, it's overflowing every time, isn't it, really? As soon as you get to 1. That's a good observation.
And every odd number, I think 1 appears.
1 appears for every odd number. That's an interesting observation. Because what happens when you add even numbers together?
You can even the number together.
Right. So you're the only one that can add an odd number in.
Yeah.
Pretty special. Okay. Now, let's look at, we've got 7, we've got 3 in a row. What's the next one going to be? 8. Fantastic. Okay. And you can see we've sort of got an overflow thing happening, right? When you've got a whole lot of white ones in a row, it's going to be the next number. Let's have 4 white ones in a row here. Great. So how many dots are there? 15? Yep. Okay, 15. And the next one is going to be 16. So we need to lose those 4 when we count up by 1. Yep, so we'll show 16 with the, yep, that's fantastic. And now, let's have all of them white. How many dots are there?
21.
21?
No.
31? Okay, how did you work it out?
I just did 16 plus 4 equals 20.
Oh, okay.
Plus 8 equals 28. Plus 2 equals 30 plus 1.
Right, so you've grouped them to add them up? Yeah. Okay, the month I was born in was black, white, black, white, black. So black, white, black, white, black. What month was I born in? October, yeah. So now I've communicated the word October to you just by saying black and white. On computers we call it 0 and 1. There's actually no 0s and 1s on a computer. Like it's just black and white things or high voltages and low voltages, but we call them 0s and 1s because that's quite handy. Okay, so there was a lot of detail in there. The students were looking at a very fine-grained level of these binary digits, these bits. And what we want to do is think about, well, what's the big picture? What are we trying to achieve there? Now, in some books, the main thing that we actually focus on is converting from decimal to binary numbers and so on. And we did do that, but it's not really what people need to know. What we need to know is that we can represent numbers using binary, that there is a unique way of doing it. And also, by the way, notice that it was constructivist, that the kids themselves decided that there were unique ways of representing the numbers. I didn't tell them, they told me. And there are other patterns in there that they will be noticing. They noticed that the smallest number is not 1, but it's 0. They would have noticed that every time I added 1 bit to it, I doubled the range. Now that's quite significant because you might have thought that if you've got 8 bits, if you want double the range of values, you might need to go to 16 bits. That's not the case. You go from 8 bits to 9 bits, you get double the range, you get twice as many things that you can represent. So those are the sort of concepts that we want them to become familiar with when they're working with binary numbers, with the representation using just 2 different values. Okay, so let's step out a bit more to an even bigger picture. What's the point of all of these resolutions, the number of bits and all that sort of thing? Well, the more bits we have, the more accurately we can represent things. If we have more bits, we can represent colours more accurately. And we want to be able to represent them as accurately as humans can perceive them. We want to represent sound as accurately as people can hear them. Characters, sure, some languages only have a couple of hundred characters in them, not even that many, but there are other languages that have thousands of characters. So we need to have enough bits to represent these languages so that people can express themselves properly in their own culture. So let's look at another concept. We're going to look at programming, but like the other activity, we're not going to use computers. In fact, we're going to start off with having kids programming other kids, but exercising the concepts that you need to be a good programmer. Okay, what we're going to do here, this activity is called KidBots. So you're going to be my robot, okay? And so if you could just stand on that square there, and we've got a series of instructions here, and the only instructions you're allowed to give him is to go forward, or to turn left, or go forward or to turn right. Okay? And your job is to program him to get from where he is to where the yellow star is. So if you want to write the instructions on here, but you need to think about what you're going to do. What's he going to do? And the trick with this, of course, is you have to think of all the instructions in advance. It'd be much easier if you could just tell him one at a time, but no. So we're getting some instructions here. Okay, so let's try this out. Now, the way we're going to do it, you're the programmer, you've written a program, you're the tester. Right? So your job is to read out her instructions. They go across here.
Okay.
All right? And your job is to follow the instructions. So let's try them.
Forward. Left.
Left is just spinning on the spot. Yeah.
Left. Right. Right. Forward. Forward. And we're done.
We're done. Okay, so we didn't quite get to the star, and this is really typical when you're learning to program. I didn't give you very good instructions about what everything does, but I think you know how it works now. So let's try again.
Okay.
Okay.
So after the left or right, I have to go forward.
Well, basically, turning left or right is only turning on the spot, right? So now it's up to you to work out what to do. Okay, we'll give it a go. Let's try it.
Forward. Left. Forward. Forward. Right. Forward. Forward. Forward.
We're done? Okay, so still didn't quite get there. Again, really normal when you're writing a program, but what we have to do is debug your program. You got an idea what you want to change now?
Yeah.
Okay. So bits of it look okay.
Yeah, the first part was okay.
Yep.
Don't know what to change. I think he got up to the rubbish bin.
Yeah, well, we can work it through, can't we? Because he went, you got forward.
Left.
Yeah.
Forward. And then forward.
Forward. So
And then right and then forward.
Mhm.
And then it's got forward. Left. Let's just see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Okay. There we go.
Forward. Left. Forward. Forward. Right. Forward. Left. Forward. Forward.
Woohoo! Okay. Well done. What you've experienced is what programmers experience. It's like it never quite works the first time.
That is a lot harder than I predicted.
Okay, so those children were doing some programming. Now, it didn't involve computers, but they were giving instructions in advance, they were testing whether they worked, and they were debugging their programs. These are all concepts that they're starting to form an idea of what they are, and yet they still haven't had to use a computer yet. This is really important for developing that vocabulary so that as they get into more and more technical systems, it's not a whole lot of jargon that they're learning at the same time, it's things that they'll be familiar with, words like debug and test and so on. The particular kids that we worked with today actually got so engaged with it that they wanted to take it back to their own school and show it to their friends. Okay, so that was programming. They were designing the moves, they were debugging their programs, and they were doing it in the large. They were physically moving around, and that's actually quite an engaging way to interact with the ideas. So now what we're going to do is move to a smaller system with an autonomous robot that will absolutely do exactly how they program it, but you'll notice that they're working with exactly the same ideas. Okay, so let's try it again with a different configuration. Let's see if you can program it. Go. And not quite. Okay, so we've got a bug in our program. Going to have to debug it and try again. Do you want to have another go?
Well, I think what I did wrong was I you should have stopped it there. Yeah, I should have stopped it there and then turned it and then gone, and then gone. Yeah, like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Turn like that. Okay, that should work. That looks good. Yep. Thanks.
And yes, looking hopeful. And the bee's got the flower. Well done. Okay, I've got a challenge for you.
Yep.
I'm going to hold up a colour, and I want you to tell me what the colour is. Do you know your colours?
Yep.
It's okay, yeah? All right. Now there's some writing on here. Don't worry about the writing. Just tell me what colour it is. Go.
Red. Black.
Okay, oh, the writing, it's red.
Red.
Okay, this is red.
Oh, wait.
Yep. You ready for the next one?
Tricky.
Yeah.
Black. Yellow. Red. Green. White. Green. Blue. Red. Yellow.
Okay. Is that kind of hard, isn't it? Yeah. So, what's difficult about this? Yeah.
It's because the writing says a different colour when the actual colour is different to the writing.
Yeah, so it's kind of contradicting itself, isn't it? Yeah. Have you ever seen someone use a computer and get frustrated at it because it's kind of being a bit unclear to them? Yeah? You ever seen anyone being a bit angry at a computer even? Yeah. So I've got the system I use, these doors that we've got at my work, and after hours, if they're locked, there's a green and a red light on them. And if I'm running late, I go running up to it. If there's a green light, what do you think I should do? Do I have to? I can go, right? No, green means it's locked. Yeah. Red, yeah, you've got that as well? And is that kind of confusing like these? Yeah. Well, why do you think they chose red for when it's open and green for when you can't go? What do you think? Yeah. So green means what, sorry?
Green means you can put your card on.
Okay, green means go ahead and scan the card, yeah? Yeah?
Red is clearer?
Red is clearer, maybe? Well, I mean, do you think it would be confusing? Is it do you find it? Yeah, it is confusing. So why did they make it confusing for you? Well, have a think about it. Who wrote the software that runs the system, the security system for your school?
CSIRO.
Okay. It's a software company that does security, isn't it? Yes. Now, when you're doing... Okay. So when you're doing security, what's good? When it's locked or unlocked?
Locked.
When it's locked. So that green means it's good because it's locked. But they've done it from the point of view of the person who's programmed the software, not from the point of view of the person who's using it. And when you're writing software, you've really got to think about things from the point of view of the person using it, otherwise you're going to confuse them. And so people who write programs need to think about who's going to be using the software. And you found that when you were doing the other activities probably. You had to think about it from the point of view of what was going to happen, not from your point of view.
Well, with those signs, my eyes and brain, they're kind of thinking of different things.
Right.
My eyes and brain, they can see the writing, and I immediately just call out the writing because that's what I expect, but it's actually a different colour, and so I need to focus on the colour, not the words, and put that out of my mind.
Right, and you're so used to doing it one way. Yeah. When people write software, they have to think about what are people used to doing and what are they most likely to do. So here's a trick that some programmers could do. You know how you have an OK and a cancel button? You imagine if you randomly swap that. What are people going to do? They're going to press cancel when they're meant to press OK. Yeah. So you really got to think about how the person using it is going to see the system. And so writing computer programs is very much about thinking about the person at the other end.
It's like your perspective differs compared to because of what you've learnt. So because we've learnt that green is more, it represents unlocked rather than red, and then red represents locked. When you change those two around, it's very hard to.
It's very confusing.
It's hard to change what you've been brainwashed with.
Yeah, and you know, here in Australia, when you go to turn a light switch on, which way do you flick the switch? Down. In America, it's the other way. And so if you have some software that's being used overseas, You can't program it from an Australian point of view because people overseas will find it really confusing if you have, you know, down being on and so on.
So it really differentiates between like countries and like
It can,
people.
yeah, you've got to think about other cultures even, you know. Like maybe even red and green have different meanings in some countries. Yeah.
They probably do.
Yeah.
And even things just 1 and 2, like there's only two possibilities, and yet people still get really confused.
Exactly, yeah.
Our prior knowledge is telling us that green means go,
Mhm.
so go through.
Yeah.
But we need to adapt to that, and we need to learn that on the door, the lock green means it's locked. And
That's
so
the other bit.
we've almost need to program our brains so that when it's green, we know it's locked. So we have to
Right.
use a key or swipe our card to unlock it.
Unlock it. Do you think that people should have to change the way that they're thinking because of the software, or the software should change the way it does because of the way people think?
I think the software has to change.
Because it's really who's not using it, not who is sending it out to the public. Because the public are the consumers who are going to use it and try and use it as a security system. So you really want them having the main knowledge on what's it all about.
Yeah.
Although if you look at it in a different perspective, it does exercise your brain, I guess.
True. Every time you go to use the door, you get some good brain exercise.
So I think it does help. It has benefits, but of course, life would be easier if it was just always green means go and red means stop.
Yeah.
It could also be good for invaders who've broken into the building.
It could fool them, yeah.
Yeah, but look at it from a distance, and if it's red, they're initially going to think, well, it's locked.
They're locked in.
Really, it's unlocked because there might be someone working there. So it has pros and cons.
Yeah.
Excellent. There's some very good thoughts there. So that particular problem is actually an old problem from psychology called the Stroop effect, where we're providing contradictions and confusing the person who's trying to read the values. Now, people often get frustrated with computers, and kids will acknowledge that. And what we're doing there with that activity is trying to get them to be sensitive to the idea that maybe the designers should design for people and not design for the computer. After all, digital systems are about the people that are going to use them and not just about the computer. And you notice that some of the students really started to think about the users and realize that you really need to understand the person who's going to be using the system that you're designing. So you'll notice that we've done a lot of computer science without actually using a computer. The activities we've been using are all from the Unplugged series, which are a bunch of activities that involve engaging students with the ideas of computer science without having to use a computer. And they can be really useful as a warm-up to get students engaged with the ideas before they get to the computer. The next activity that we're going to do is one that's a favourite from the Unplugged suite, and it's one which involves sorting things into order. It's called a parallel sorting network, and it's actually quite an advanced idea. And it gets people thinking about how much can we get happening in parallel at the same time to try and speed up the rate at which we get things done. From the kids' point of view, it's just a lot of fun following lines on the ground. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give each of you a number. I want you to just hold it in front here. And what we're going to try and compare numbers with each other. And the way we're going to do it is I'll get two of you follow the white line and you'll meet at a circle. So follow the line now and say hi.
Hi.
Okay. If your number is smaller, you follow the arrow out to the left, and if your number is larger, follow the line out to the right. And you'll end up in another circle. Wait there while these next two, you come along. Say hi.
Hi.
Larger one, follow the line out to the right, smaller one to the left, and meanwhile you come along. Compare your numbers. Yep. Smaller one to the left, larger to the right, and just keep on doing that. You may have to wait for someone to turn up. Always make sure that the other person sees what the comparison is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so hold your numbers up so I can see them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got them sorted into order. Well done. Okay, cool. So let's go back to the beginning, and we're going to do it with some different numbers. Okay, so we're going to do the same again, but with slightly bigger numbers. So go forward to a circle all together. Yep, check them carefully, these ones are a bit trickier. Okay, let's see the numbers. 171's 322, 332, 382, 146, 244, and 27. You're in order. Well done. Okay. Do you want to try something a bit different?
Yeah.
Okay, let's collect in those numbers. Okay, so who can read music?
I can.
You can? So you know the higher up here it is, the higher the note,
Yeah.
and the lower down, the lower the note. And so we'll have the highest one is going to go to the right, and the lowest one to the left. Let's see what happens. You may have to help each other. Yeah. Okay, so come forward when you meet. So the highest note goes to the right, the lowest note goes to the left. Highest to the right, smallest, lowest to the left. Okay, hold them up and let's have a look. So it's dong, bum, 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 bum. Excellent. They're all in order from lowest to highest. So you'll notice that there are a whole lot of computational thinking activities going on there. And not only things to do with computer science, but also integrating with other subjects. It's very easy to bring in things from other subjects, such as comparing words for alphabetical order, or in this case, comparing notes for which is the highest and lowest. Now, we've exercised all sorts of digital concepts, and there are many ways to do this. It's great for the students to engage with these, but we always need to get back to the bigger picture. That they're learning to be citizens in a digital world, that they're learning about how things are actually working on these digital devices that they use. And hopefully they're also starting to realize that the digital systems aren't all about the devices or bits or bytes or programming, but the big thing is that digital systems, we need to focus on the most important part of the system, and that is the human who is going to be a part of that system. Oh, and it's kind of fun too.
Thank you for joining Education on Air. Now it's time for the breakout sessions. There are over 100 sessions from educators across the globe over the next 24 hours, so there's a lot to choose from. From the sessions you can't catch live, they're available to watch on demand as recordings after the event. In a few moments, you'll be redirected back to the Education on Air agenda page, where you can see all of the breakout sessions. You'll notice that the sessions have been organised by the audience that may be most interested. We have tracks for teachers, IT and administrators, school leaders, or anyone in the community. You can also filter by time, theme, or product. The website will indicate which sessions are currently live. To watch a session, click on it and scroll over to the Watch Now button, and that's it, you're in. Don't forget to ask questions using the live Q&A feature during the breakout sessions. Thanks again for being part of Education on Air.